With South Africans bracing for more fuel price hikes from the 1st of June, there is still no word from government on whether the fuel levy intervention will be extended. In March, Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana announced a reduction of the general fuel levy by R1.50 a litre from the 6th of April to the end of May. Let's talk about the latest from Cabinet now. We're joined by Layton Beard, spokesperson for the Automobile Association of South Africa. Layton, always good to have you on. So yesterday, Minister in the Presidency, Mondli Kungubele, while reporting back on the outcomes of the latest cabinet briefing, said that government was giving serious considerations to possible interventions as far as the issue of the fuel price is concerned. Is there any other option but to repeat what was done in March?
Yeah, it's a very good question, Tembakile. I mean, earlier in the month, the Minister of Mineral Resources and Energy, Mr. Gwidi Mantashe, indicated there was no way that relief was going to be extended beyond May. So the announcement yesterday that government was seized with this issue of the fuel levy, came as a very interesting development. I guess at the moment we're waiting to see exactly what the move government is going to make. So, you asked the question, is there anything else they can do? Well, according to the minister, it's impossible for government to extend that relief because they simply don't have the money to cover whatever losses are going to be incurred through the reduction of that levy. What the AA has been saying for a very long time is we need to do a review of the fuel price, calculations that go into every litre of fuel, to determine whether A, those calculations are correct, and B, whether all the components on a litre of fuel still need to be there. So for us, that's the first step, and it needs to happen sooner rather than later.
And there had been word from government that was getting a fair amount of consideration, but the fuel price, the new one, is due to kick in June. So we're clearly not going to have anything substantial by way of an actual announcement on a recalculation of the fuel price. So in terms of short-term interventions, is the fuel levy the only thing that government can turn to as an almost immediate form of relief?
Well, it's the only lever, that and the road accident fund are the only two levers within the fuel price that government really has immediate control over. So if you're asking, is there anything government can do immediately now, then those two levies are the two things that they can affect. Whether they have an appetite to do that and whether they can make the calculations to cover whatever losses they have, obviously that's something we'll need to see. I think we're getting to, the end of the month very, very quickly. The adjustment is scheduled for next Wednesday, and an announcement on what the new fuel price is going to be should either come through later today or perhaps sometime on Monday. But certainly it doesn't give government a lot of time to make an announcement in terms of what it's going to do. We look back at what the announcement was in March when the relief was announced, and government had several proposals on that on the table at that time. Looking at some of the smaller levies that are attached to a litre of fuel, putting a price cap on the price of 93 unleaded fuel, specifically in Gauteng. So these are some of the things that government itself has mentioned. I think what we've been waiting for is some clarity on exactly what it plans to do going forward. I think the fact that we're waiting so long to get clarity means that it's not an easy decision for them to make. But a decision has to be made one way or the other. When we look at what the Central Energy Fund is forecasting going into June, the price increases they are looking at are incredibly significant and are definitely going to push the price of a litre of fuel into territory we've never seen before. So this is going to be a big problem, and I think government needs to act now sooner rather than later.
And some of the calculations I've seen bandied about suggest that we may actually end up paying up to 25 Rand for a litre of fuel. Now, that would have a massive impact on all other spheres of life, wouldn't it?
No, absolutely. Look, I think we need to put it in context that South Africa is not isolated in these increases. It's something that's happening all over the world. In Europe, in North America, in Asia, countries around the world are grappling with this issue of rising fuel costs. But you're absolutely correct. Once we reach, when an increase is affected and the fuel price is adjusted with whatever the increase is, it has a knock-on effect on every single consumer in the country. It's such a huge input cost in all sectors: agriculture, mining, manufacturing, road freight, transport, all of these sectors are affected by that, and those increases will then be passed on to consumer. So what we're seeing happening in places like Europe and America, where cost of living is becoming a huge issue, it's the same thing that's going to happen in South Africa. And in South Africa, we have the unique situation that our economy is in a very weak state at the moment. So these increases are going to hit hard. We've got consumers that are already financially embattled, and it's just going to make the situation for them even worse, Tembeki.
So given that, as you say, the South African fuel problem is not a domestic one largely, it's global, in fact, at this point. Part of the problem has to do with the Russian invasion of Ukraine and how that's impacting the cost of energy at the moment. Even if there were to be a recalculation of the fuel price, how much of a buffer would that be, given that so many of the factors are external?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very good question. Again, I think that the debate around the review of the fuel price is to determine whether every single component there is necessary and what can we manipulate locally to mitigate against those increases. Now, we've spoken about the two main levies, and as I said, those are the two big levers government has access to right now. When you talk about the fuel levy and people saying just scrap it, you've got to consider that that's 95 billion rand that is going to be lost to the fiscus if you were to just take that away. And this raises a whole range of other issues around government spending, around corruption, around allocation of funds. So, there is the bigger debate that needs to be had. If we were to lose that 95 billion, could government find it elsewhere if controls and checks and balances were in place to actually monitor government spending correctly and ensure that money that was allocated was spent in the right ways? And that, I think, Tembekile, is essential to the debate that the AA is calling for.
Layton Beard, always good to have your time. Thank you very much.